This week on the Orange Box podcast, we talk about the next Xbox, dynamic pricing coming to PlayStation 5 games, why PlayStation PC port sales have suffered, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to the new Beautiful Bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 127. I am your host, the man who has learned, according to his inside source at PlayStation, who is not authorized to speak publicly about the company's strategy, that Ekbok is dead, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me, as always, the man who is the inside source at PlayStation, Justin, better known as I'm Sarahcon. How you doing today? How's your week been?
It's been relieving in a sense. So today I thought I was going to get everything done Friday, but today I finally finished that one sort of ongoing project that at work that has been going on. It got pushed back several times just because of other things I had to work on, but that was finally accomplished. So unless someone comes back and says, hey, we need this or that, which shouldn't really be a big deal either way, that's over with. So I'm very pleased on that end.
Nice.
The one thing that I mentioned last week that I was waiting on in the mail had arrived, and I'm now trying to figure out when I want to actually work on doing this video, because I feel like trying to get some of the stuff that might be a bit of a hassle, but I do know that I want to get started on it as soon as possible, just so that way I can get the ball rolling. But at least that's here, so that's good to go. Let's see what else. Oh yeah, so Saturday evening, so I had bought some frozen shrimp tempura a while ago, and Saturday, and I had an idea of what I was gonna do with it, but I had to find out where my sushi kit was. But I made some shrimp tempura rolls with that, and it turned out pretty well. I forgot to buy some rice vinegar, unfortunately, so the rice was kind of sticky after cooking it, but it wasn't to have that consistency to stick to the nori as much as I would like it to. But overall, it turned out pretty well. At least it tasted decently, so yeah. I'm pleased on that end. On that, and then lastly, last week I mentioned that we have a music league at my job, and for Friday's entry, I put in Our Drafts Collide from Expedition 33, and I honestly did better than I expected. I don't think I saw what the final votes were, because I think there were 2 people that needed to vote. But as far as when I last checked, I was tied at 4th place, which is a whole lot better than I expected. So, you know what? I feel more wee than woo overall. So I am quite content with that. But yeah, that is everything that's happened this past week.
Nice. Good stuff. Well, I will already say I didn't get any video stuff done over the weekend, but it's really just because things happened that weren't expected. So we'd been talking for quite some time about the potential of getting rid of our Acura, which is the vehicle we bought when we first moved here, because we just had all sorts of issues with it. I mean, I'm sure you remember last summer, the AC running out 2 hours into a 10-hour drive, and then we weren't able to get it fixed until sometime after we were in Wyoming. And then we had to replace all 4 tires, and we just had all sorts of warning lights going off all the time, and just like we take it in to get it fixed, and we think it's fixed, and then something else comes up, and it just been such a hassle. So we'd been talking about it for a while, and I finally talked to one of the guys at our church who's the manager over at a used car place, which is where we bought the Acura originally, and just asked him, hey, do you have any minivans in stock? Because we were thinking, You know, we want to have something that's especially going to be better for longer car trips, has a little more room as well. Because the Acura's, I mean, like, it had enough room for us to at least be relatively comfortable on the long trips, but it was still just cramped enough to where, like, it was hard to fit everything in the car, and just, it wasn't the best. Better than, you know, driving the Subaru long distances because it has a lot more room than that, but still not great. So he said that they had just gotten in a few minivans in stock, and I asked, you know, what year they were and everything, and then, you know, they were pretty recent. Like, he said he thought that they were like 2024, 2025. And I think, I can't remember exactly what he said as far as the mileage on them was, but it was basically each of them. I mean, it was actually like there was one 2023 and three 2024s. And they were all right around the 45,000 mile mark. So really not too bad. So we decided, you know, I think we're just going to go for it. You know, we might as well. So we got together, you know, money that we needed in order to be able to pay cash. And while we were waiting for the money to come in, because it was supposed to be because I like got it going on Thursday, or well, it was like Wednesday night, and then so it shipped out on Thursday. It was like 2 days for the shipping for the check to get here, and so I figured, okay, 2 business days. It's probably not gonna be here till Monday. Not a problem. But we went in on Saturday just to take a look at them, test drive stuff out, you know, get a better idea of what we were looking at. And I had done lots of research before this, you know, just to make sure that didn't have to worry about getting ripped off, which it turns out it wasn't even going to be an issue anyway, because with the manager being, you know, a guy at our church, and him basically saying your friends and family discount kind of thing, you know, trying to get us the best deal. And then, of course, the research I had done as well, I could see that they weren't charging us for a bunch of extra random stuff and all that. So we just planned to look and, you know, test stuff out, and then, you know, assuming we liked what we found, we would bring in a check as soon as we had the money in. Well, as we were looking at it, he says to us, well, you know, I trust you guys. If you want to drive it home today, and then you can just bring in the money as soon as the money gets here, you know, I'll check with the owner, you know, make sure it's okay with him. And, you know, he was fine with it, because even though he doesn't know us personally, he knows the manager, who, you know, trusts him and trusts his word. So we were able to drive home a basically new minivan on Saturday, and we got it. We got the check. Well, the check actually came on Saturday, but of course the bank was closed. So we got that deposited, and then got the cashier's check for it today, and, you know, went and paid for it. So we have a 2024 Chrysler Pacifica. So it's a nice, super fancy brand, you know, basically new minivan. I mean, it has under 50,000 miles on it. Still has most of its 7-year warranty on the engine and transmission. And then we also went ahead and got some additional warranty stuff that covers like all the electronics and all that, because that was no longer covered by the original warranty. So but yeah, it ended up being a pretty good price, and you know, like way cheaper than I thought it would be, which was really nice. And it's a lot newer and nicer. I mean, there's definitely some things about it that are like harder to get used to. One of the biggest things is that the shifter, and I guess this is something in newer vehicles in general, instead of it being like a stick that you press in the brake and then you pull on a stick in order to shift from, you know, park, reverse, drive, and so on. This one, it's a little knob on the dash that you do that. Oh. And so it's just weird. It's hard to get used to, and it's very computer heavy, which in some ways is really nice. Like, one thing that I really like about it is that it has Android Auto, which basically makes it so that you can cast your Android phone, or, I mean, you can do the same thing with an Apple, with an iPhone, to the screen. So like when we're doing, for example, the maps for our long trips, instead of having to have it running on the phone and then just playing the audio through the Bluetooth, it actually displays the map on screen, and that just makes it a lot easier to track all that. And yeah, I mean, I've only driven it like a few times so far. My wife has driven it more just because it's more her vehicle. I mean, it's our family vehicle, but she's the one who's going to be using it the most, whereas I'm just continuing to drive my Subaru because, that's the car that I have. It's been my car, primarily my car, since we moved here. So yeah, but yeah, so that, because that happened, that ended up taking up a good chunk of our day Saturday, and then Sunday I had some cooking and stuff to do before we had our family group, and so I just really didn't get much of any time to do anything else. And basically the only thing I've really been able to do apart from the normal life stuff is just some gaming here and there, and that's really about it. My in-laws are coming in this Friday, and they're going to be here through spring break, because next Thursday, Friday, and part of the day Saturday, we're going on our marriage retreat for the year. So they'll be here to hang out with the kids, and the kids will be on spring break. And then they'll like stop in a couple other Fridays, like I think the 10th, or the 10th is one of the Fridays. I can't remember. I feel like that there's 2 other Fridays. I just don't remember the exact dates. But anyway, point is that they'll be here a few times. And so yeah, I don't think there's really anything else of note. Really, getting the car was the biggest thing. But by the grace of God, we had the ability to pay cash for it, and so that's one thing. We don't have to worry about debt for that. It's just fully paid for.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's everything.
All right, nice. Definitely glad you're able to get the new car, especially like you said with the other issues that you've had with the previous one, and being able to pay it off in full is also an added bonus, I'd say.
Yeah, and the previous one we were able to trade in and got a little more than I thought we would out of it, so that was nice. Because like from what I saw online, the Carfax value was like $4,450, right around there. We were able to get $5,000 for it, so that towards the cost of the vehicle definitely saved us some money, and also helped us get rid of it because we were getting so sick of dealing with it, and we just had so many problems with it over the years that it was, especially last year. Last year was just such a hassle. But this one is not all-wheel drive, so at least if we have any tires get ruined or whatever, we don't have to replace all 4 at once. We only have to replace 1 at a time, which is very helpful. But yeah, so going into the video game topics, because we are a video game podcast, what have you been playing this week?
All right, so I started off with Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly remake demo. I saw it and I said, you know what, I'll go ahead and give it a whirl. I first started playing it on the Steam Deck, and it can run the game at 30 FPS, and it doesn't actually look bad at all things considered. But at the same time, I was like, 30 isn't really enough for me, so I went ahead and just switched over to the desktop and continued playing there. Oddly enough, the game is completely capped at 60, which, I mean, isn't too big of a deal, considering that it's not like it's fast-paced or anything like that, but it's just weird that it's locked at 60, that you only have 30 and 60 as frame rate caps, and then also, for some reason, by default, even if you have more powerful hardware, it's automatically set to 30, and you have to go ahead and manually set it to 60 if you want to play at 60, which was odd as well. But as far as the demo goes, yeah, it's definitely Fatal Frame. It's definitely got that creepy vibes, which I thought, oh yeah, my only regret was not playing this with headphones. I feel like that would have made the experience better for me, but it was enjoyable, and I think I probably might get this not too long after launch. I'm not entirely certain because as far as what I played in this demo as opposed to what I played in the little bit I played in Fatal Frame 5,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sort of enjoying this more. So I might just like pick this up at some time. Maybe if there's like, well, I mean, Green Man Gaming might have a discount. I'll say like if there's like a 15-20% discount, I'll go ahead and grab it. But so I won't get day one, but I'll probably get at some point afterwards. I'll pick that up. But yeah. But then mainly I've been playing Hades 2, and I made so much more progress than I thought.
Nice.
So at this point in time, I had primarily just been trying to go up against Typhon and just like try to face him again and again. And I got very frustrated at one point just because, and I mean, it wasn't really a big deal on all, but I was so close to beating him in one run. I made a mistake and I kept dodging too early when he does his head slam. And because of that, it just ruins me. And I was so close to being him, but I died. And I was just so, I was so frustrated with that. But then I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to have to eventually at some point do this. I'm going to go ahead and do a run with the Argent Skulls. And so I said, all right, cool. Unfortunately, the boons that I was getting weren't that great, and I said, okay, that's fine. I'll just keep going on, see how far I can get. I said I should be able to get partially through Mount Olympus I before I die, but I said that's fine. Unfortunately, though, it was in the middle of the fight with Eris, and I'm just thinking to myself, I have never lost to Eris before, and it's only because of these stupid skulls. And the lack of any decent boons that I have, but I mainly blame the skulls just because I really cannot stand those things.
Yeah.
But after that run though, I said, alright, I'll try something else. I'll try the twin flames. I tried that, beat that round. I said, alright, cool, we're making progress. I think I only need to beat I only need to win 2 more runs and then I'm good to go. And so I did that. I said, wait a second, am I actually close to getting through this and I'm going to complete the game? And so I went through, I did that, and I was like, oh my goodness, I have gone through here. And so then, after that point, well, no, I had to do one more run. But then I finally beat him after doing the incantation and then made the final run against Kronos. And I must say that probably halfway through playing the game, I thought to myself, you know, I wonder if we're going to have another Hades moment with how the story goes. And sure enough, while my methods were partially wrong, the outcome was still the same, more or less. So I'm like, okay, you know, I'm satisfied with how this turned out. So yeah, so I've beaten the main story for the game. And right now, I've been starting to doing just some extra runs to do stuff, and also trying to get other achievements completed. And I feel more confident in doing some runs, especially with the overworld and trying to go up there, as long as it's not with the Ardent Skulls. But I do feel like I could probably boost my fear up some more, just to get certain tasks completed as well. So yeah, so I don't know how, or I don't know what's required to get the epilogue. I'll definitely keep going until I get that, and depending on how I feel, if I don't feel necessarily burned out at the time, I'll still keep going and try to get all the remaining achievements. But for right now, I definitely feel good about what's been going on so far. But all in all, though, this game still has just been an amazing ride. It's been just as good as the first Hades, and I am glad that I have been playing through this so far. But yeah, that is everything that I've been playing.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Let's see here. Yeah, I don't quite remember what all you have to do to get the epilogue. It's just been a little while. Oh yes, I do remember what it is. It's ultimately you have to find the fates. which
Okay.
I think you just have to complete a certain number of the prophecy things, the stuff from the fated list, and then once you get enough of those, then you have to well, I don't think I want to spoil it for you, but anyway, there's just a specific sequence of stuff you have to do in order to get the fates to show up to where you can get the actual epilogue from that. So,
Okay.
but yeah. Yeah, good stuff. I feel like there was something else I was going to say about that. I know with the skulls, honestly, the thing that helps the most is just, it was the if you can get the perk that makes it so that they return to you automatically, that's hugely helpful. It's just, it's a pretty rare thing. Like, I only got it, I think, 2 or 3 times total of the times I ran through with that. And Argent Skulls were definitely not my favorite. There's one aspect that is very different from the others, where it just, like, it fires them all. I mean, where basically, like, you, instead of it firing off a bunch of individual skulls, it just, like, basically loads them up, and then you press Y or X, yeah, Y, and it does, you know, you press your special button, and then it fires off like one big blast. Something along those lines. I can't remember. That one was interesting, but yeah, the skulls were only good, as far as I was concerned, if you did them specifically, if you got that perk that let it so that they automatically return. Otherwise, they were probably my least favorite of the different weapons to use. So, but yeah, very good stuff.
And yeah. And I guess one question I also sort of had was, I'm trying to remember which one it is. Oh gosh, I'm sorry. I'm having a brain freeze now. Is there a way to, I guess, keep track? I know you can keep track of or rather, there's one boon from Chaos that I need,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't really seem to get it. I mean, like, I keep going through different Chaos, and I don't know if it's like a rarity type of thing. I can't remember what it's called. I think it's Chant. But regardless of what I've done, I've gone through probably 10 Chaos Gates so far, and I have not been able to get that one to come up. So I don't know if that's just something that is required of getting a certain boon from another Olympian, or if it's just a very random rare drop.
Honestly, I don't know, because I just know that basically all the ones that I got, it was just like, I would just occasionally do them. Like, I wasn't specifically seeking them out. It was just more when I felt like I could manage doing a Chaos Gate, I'd do one, and if a boon popped up that I hadn't done before, then I would do it. Yeah. I did remember the other thing I was going to ask you. So, what did you think when Phase 3 came up for Chronos?
Okay, here's the thing. Considering the fact that this was to be the showdown, I said to myself, I'm not going to use any fear during this run, just in case there's an extra phase.
Yeah.
And then sure enough, when that happened, I said, I knew it. And I was so nervous though, because I did happen to have a couple of Death Defiances, and I had lost one, but I said it's no big deal. It shouldn't be that big of a problem. But then I lost it, and so then I said, all right, I think strength should hold me out for the rest of this, but I really need to be careful here, because I do not want to have to go through this all over again. But fortunately, I was able to beat him within that final life, but I was just like, all right, you're doing stuff that I did not expect. But it was an enjoyable final fight, though.
One thing I will say is that if you happen to run out of Death Defiances, you'll actually still get revived. I mean, I don't know if it's more than once, but it's once for sure, because I'm pretty sure the first time I did that fight, I don't think I was using Death Defiance at all, but it still ended up reviving me after, I mean, the one when I died during phase 3, it revived me, and then I was able to finish out the fight. So, but I don't think that's the normal thing. I think it's just for this specific one, because of the fact that it's the end of the main story that you do that. So, yeah. Good stuff. All right. Well, as far as what I've been playing, I haven't gotten as much game time as I would have liked. It's just been a busier week, but I did get to play some stuff. I didn't play any Phoenix Wright stuff this week. I ended up just not getting to it. But I played a little more of Kena Bridge of Spirits. I did manage to get past the one boss fight that I had been stuck on, and it still took me quite a few tries, but I was able to do that. I just did that on my desktop, and I played a little bit past that. It's actually kind of interesting, though, doing that boss fight. I tried doing it a few times on the Steam Deck as well, and, there I just have it set to 40, capped at 40, and I actually did pretty well. I actually did better on the parrying at the lower frame rate, surprisingly, but yeah, I ultimately just beat him at the super high frame rates with all the gorgeous visuals, and yeah, so I played a little bit that way, played a little bit on just in handheld mode on, or regular Steam Deck, like running natively, but then I also ended up doing some streaming with Artemis, or Apollo and Moonlight. So I was able to play that and get the solid 60 while streaming, still at really good visual quality. Although initially I had it set for streaming at 800p, and then I realized how I could change it to 1080p so that it would just be better visual quality. And you could do that direct. Instead of having to do it on the computer, you could just do it on the Steam Deck. And so I did that, and from there it's been at 1080p. Beyond that, I did play a little more Gotham Knights. It really wasn't very much. This was just playing on the Steam Deck, so just more footage I recorded directly from Steam Deck. Yeah, really not a whole lot more. I did find that there were a couple times where the frame rate did dip a little bit more than it was last week. But still, overall, not bad. I just wasn't wanting to play quite as much. I did check to see if there was any real difference visually, whether I went with whether I use like XeSS or if I just turned off upscaling, and it really didn't make much difference in terms of visuals or performance. So I still I used one aspect of the upscaling that just sharpens the image a bit more, which I think makes it look better. But otherwise, I basically just ended up going back to mostly native resolution because it really wasn't making a drastic difference. And I found out the big reason why it performs so much better is because they got rid of Denuvo from the game. It's well, that explains a lot. It's amazing how that happens. It's still, I wish it was 60, or even if I could get a locked 45 or whatever, that would be great. But still, overall, it's way better than it was when I tested it out last year. So the bit that I played was good from that standpoint. But there's a game that I had heard about last year that I heard was really funny, very British in terms of its humor, and I had bought it a while ago on sale, but I hadn't tried it out, and I think it was probably Thursday or Friday, probably Friday. No, it was, I guess it probably was Thursday. It was Thursday or Friday. I don't remember which. But it was, we were in a tornado watch state where there could potentially be something. And so I just wanted something to kind of lighten the mood a little bit. So I started playing and ultimately ended up finishing, because it wasn't a very long game, a little game called Thank Goodness You're Here. Now, if you've never heard of this game, I don't know how to explain it except that it is completely cartoon art style, extremely goofy, extremely British humor, and it's just, oh my goodness, it's hilarious. So you only have 3 things that you can do control wise. You can move around, you can jump, or you can slap. And the slap ends up having different functionalities depending on where you are with things, but it's basically like solving puzzles, sort of, by just having to like complete certain things. It's a lot like the old point and click adventures, basically. Just like you're interacting with different pieces in the environment and that sort of thing, and solving puzzles with that. And just, oh my goodness, it's so random and so British in the humor, and it's just absolutely hilarious, and it's so funny. 'Cause you're just playing as like this little short guy that's like the size of a child, basically, but kind of looks like the mascot from the Lemonheads candy, except with like little tufts of orange hair, but he has yellow skin. And you're just going around and like you're slapping stuff, and you'll get people, like they just need help with things, and it's like, well, thank goodness you're here, and they just ask you to do random things, and it's just there's this one gag, and I'm not gonna get into most of them, but I just want to talk about one because I thought it was especially funny. So you have these 2 neighbors next to each other, and for you have the older lady arguing with the younger guy because he put some of his trash in her trash can. He's like, no, I didn't. And then the next time you come back, he had put like either, I think he had actually put his actual trash can inside of her trash can. And then the next time you come, I think either he was inside her trash can or they were both inside her trash can. It's like one of them initially and then both of them. And then it's so random and it's so brilliant and I love it. And it cracks me up. Oh, and there's a scene, this is, pretty early game thing, but it's actually, the footage is playing right now. So you find a lawnmower and you start pushing it, and then it like zooms out or like zooms into a scene. You have 2 flowers, like 2 daisies, talking back and forth to each other, just constantly saying, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And you're just pushing the lawnmower back and forth in the background until you eventually get to the front of the screen and you just run over one of them. And then the one daisy turns to on the other side of her and starts saying, I love you. And then they're going back and forth. Oh, this game is amazing. I love it. I love it so much. Unfortunately, I missed out on some stuff, so I couldn't get all the achievements. But basically, once you complete the game, then the only way you can go back is if you restart the game. So, but yeah, it's short. I think it took me like 3 hours total to get through the whole thing. And that was definitely with sometimes where I didn't quite know where to go next, and so I was just kind of wandering around smacking stuff and seeing where it got me. But yeah, absolutely brilliant game. But I did play one more thing, and this was another one where I was streaming it with Apollo and Moonlight to my Steam Deck, and that is Death Stranding. I got the motivation to start playing again. I figured, okay, I know it's going to take a while for me to grind through the remaining achievements, but I'm just going to start working on it, just do some deliveries, and, focus on what I need to do in order to get the rest of the achievements. I did manage to get one of them, which was one that took, like, most of the game, and that was just getting all of my different ratings up to 60 or higher. And so now I'm just basically working on the remaining stuff, which it's like I have to get a total of 10 premium deliveries with a rating of Legends or Legend. I think it's Legend of Legends or higher. It might just be Legend or higher. And I have, so like of the 4 categories I have, there's one of them that I have like, I think 15 or 16. and then one of them I have like 8 right now, and then the other 2 are well above what you need, because you have to do 10 for one, 10 of each for one, and then 20 of each for the second one. So basically, in order to knock out the remaining achievements related to those, I got 2 more that I need to do for the first achievement, and then on one, and then like another 10 beyond that on the one, plus another like 4 or 5 beyond that for the other. So, and I found some ways to improve the speed of some of the deliveries that are time sensitive. So like the first area, you start off in the game on the eastern portion of the map, is one of the easier places because it's much smaller. And so I set up a bunch of zip lines going from like the starting city all the way to another city. And like there's only like one spot where I have to get off the zip line to climb down a rope and then get on another zip line and then take a few more to get over there. And so instead of like, I'm given a 35-minute time limit to get it, and in order to get the best rating, I think I have to complete it in like 7 minutes or something, and I did it about 5.5, because even though it's a huge chunk to get across, I just basically did zip lines all the way there. So that was pretty nifty. But yeah, so I've been doing that one probably more than any of the others as far as the actual time I put in. And it's probably just going to be like, for the time being, it's going to be going back and forth between this and Kena for the most part. This one's a good one though, just because it's like, it's one I can very easily do while listening to stuff in the background. It's not overly challenging, and it's also because of the fact that the achievements I have left to get are basically all very grindy. Then yeah, there's that. But I did finally find Jeff Keighley. I'm thinking he doesn't have Jeff Keighley's voice, but I think he's the last like big special cameo in the game that I hadn't come across yet. Because, you know, Herman Holst, long time ago, came across him, and Conan O'Brien, and Edgar Wright, and I think that there's a couple other like Sony related, like PlayStation related guys that I've come across previously, but I don't know who they are off the top of my head. But yeah, so that is everything.
Regarding the final deliveries you have to do, are those part of the game, or are those just like the ones, or are those just ones that you find in the world, like say that other players say drop off or something like that?
Well, no, because what it is that when you go any location you go to, there will be deliveries that you can pick up. They're just not story related or anything. They're just random deliveries you can do.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't certain if it was like you replay a mission or something like that, or if it's just like, hey, find these deliveries anywhere in the world.
Yeah, so what it is basically, like each of the different locations that you go to, when you go to the terminal, there's different deliveries you have as options. And I mean, they're like I said, they're not story related in any way, shape, or form, so there's no story stuff going on. This is just different deliveries you can do, different types of deliveries.
Okay. And so I guess because of that, you'll always know where they are, or
yeah, because you're usually picking them up at the terminal. Occasionally there will be something where they'll tell you need to go retrieve this from like one of the enemy territory spots or whatever, but most of the time that's not going to be what you're doing.
Okay then. Yeah, I was just wondering then, because I was thinking. I mean, I'm nowhere near where you are, obviously, with as far as like being able to just create zip lines and stuff. But I was wondering, how far ahead of time could I think about planning or having some sort of system already set up that would make things easier or more efficient in that regard. But okay, I guess if you already know where you're going or what you need to do, then that could definitely help with just going, hey, while I'm out here, I might as well set up this or do this, and then later on when I come back, I can just go ahead and do that one delivery system that I need.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, that's definitely something worth doing, like, when you get later in the game and you're in between, like, actual deliveries, because that way you don't have to worry about time or anything like that. It's just basically setting yourself up for success, because it makes it so that you can get to the destination a lot faster, but then also you can keep the cargo in better condition because of the fact that you're not dealing with elements as much, because you're barely spending any time out in the open air dealing with timefall or anything.
Yeah, I've definitely had my fair taste of that. Then let me say I had one other question. Oh gosh. So about thank goodness you're here. So you would primarily categorize that then as like an adventure type game and not necessarily as a platformer then?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I mean, there's some very light platforming, but it's nothing difficult.
Okay. I might definitely have to check that out then, because it definitely sounds interesting.
Yeah, you would enjoy it, I'm sure.
Go ahead and just add that to my list then. But yeah, that all is good stuff there.
All right. Well, let's get into the news. So I'm going to start off, first of all, by doing a follow-up from one of our stories from last week. So last week, of course, we had talked extensively about the possibility that PlayStation might be pulling, might stop doing ports of their PlayStation exclusive, their first-party games over to PC. And Jason Schreier had basically said, "Trust me, bro, this is the case, and I'll provide more information soon. It's not speculation. This is all like based on actual insider information." So, following day after we recorded, he put out the article on Bloomberg, giving his source, which essentially he said that this is a person who is familiar with PlayStation's plans but is not authorized to speak about them publicly. And he also emphasized further that because the industry is changing all the time, plans could change again in the future. So, essentially, the short version is this may or may not actually be an actual thing, and we'll have to wait and see. But do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, so I think it's more or less along the lines of where I stood last week, where sure Jason Schreier has a track record of being right, and this is definitely quite plausible, what this person is saying. At the same time, time will tell about, what happens. Overall, like I said last week, things have been sort of slowing down in general with the releases that Sony has had. Even on the PS5, they haven't had too many releases there, so I suppose it would be a bit weird if they did have consecutive releases on PC and then only like 1 or 2 releases for the PS5 in a single year. And that definitely would not make the PlayStation users all that thrilled, even if they were the same games that they had.
Yeah.
But that being said, even if Sony isn't going to be putting their games on PC, or if they're going to, whether they just slow down the releases or just halt them altogether, it's not going to make me go and say, well, I guess since they didn't do that, I'll go out and buy a PS5. No, I'm not going to buy a PS5. I mean, they could literally just stop putting games on PC altogether today and start the PS6 tomorrow with 20 exclusives. And I'll say, cool, that's great, that's fine. because I'm not going to go and buy a PS6. There's no reason for me to do that when you have a very closed system that is limited in what it can do, and I have this open system which is not limited, and I have plenty of options to choose from. I have a lot of games to choose from. I have different storefronts I can choose from. I have ways to get games cheaper than PlayStation guys. That's another topic we'll get into later. But I have all this flexibility and freedom. Why would I give that up for a handful of exclusives? Like, right. I mean, I'm not going to spend who knows how much, $500 on a PS5 just for 1 or 2 games. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Back when I was just on console, yeah, okay, maybe not a PS5, a PS4, maybe. I would have done that. Just because I felt like, all right, there are about 20 games I can think of that I don't have on any of my Nintendo systems, that would be worth it. But now that I have a plethora of games to choose from, it's not worth it for getting a PS5. Especially considering the fact that I also lose a whole lot of customization with settings and stuff as well. And I have to choose, do I want purely frame rates or do I want better visuals? And it's like, on PC, I can choose how I want it to go. And I don't necessarily have to compromise altogether. I can have a balance in between. So if Sony is going forward with not releasing games on PC, fine. That's their prerogative. But at the same time, I'm not going to be moved by it. I've got plenty of games on my backlog, plenty of games on my wish list, and plenty of games that will be coming out in the future that are definitely still enticing to me. And I still have the Sony games that I already own that I haven't played yet. So
yeah,
I'm certain that me not playing the other ones won't impact me that much either.
Exactly.
But yeah, that is everything I have.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this and, I mean, for one, I mean, yes, Jason Schreier has a good track record of being correct, of course. But the fact that his source is someone who says that they're familiar with the plans, but is not authorized to speak about them, whereas last year when the actual heads at PlayStation said our plans for 2026 and in the future include PlayStation first-party titles going off console. I'm more inclined to believe them. Now, is it possible that plans have changed since then? Maybe, but that was what they said to investors. So, while I personally will be treating these rumors as true, just because of the fact that Jason Schreier does have that track record, until I hear definitively from PlayStation executives whether or not their plans have changed, which probably won't be until April or later because of end of their fiscal year coming up at the end of this month. I'm just not going to say this is definitively their plan or it isn't. And to me, once again, it doesn't matter too much. I mean, yes, it's disappointing that they're not going to bring their games over. But the problem is that there's so much competition over here, especially just for our time. And we have so many games already that we want to play that we already own, to where it's like, it just doesn't... It's not as big of a deal. And one of the things that I thought about that I realized a lot, just thinking back to, especially when I was buying consoles all the time, buying the PS4, the Wii U even, going back then, the Switch, initially before it started getting a bunch of great games on it, and, early time when basically it's like you have Breath of the Wild and then you have a couple of things here and there that are okay, but most of it is just like, I want more reasons to play this system. With PC, that problem doesn't really exist because, I mean, yes, if you want something that's going to push your system, there's already a lot of options. Even older games, you can get them to push your system quite a bit because the fact that you can do so much more customization, you can do significantly higher settings than you can on consoles. and you're not limited to 30 frames per second or whatever the developer gives you. You can do what you want with it, even if you completely leave out mods. So there's enough of an issue with that. Of course, once again, as well, like as you mentioned, the simple fact that we have so many different, that we already have certain PlayStation titles in our libraries that we haven't played yet. I mean, I have, like, just thinking about it right now, the first party PlayStation titles. If I leave out all the games that I already previously played and beat, I have Horizon Forbidden West that I haven't finished, Returnal that I haven't finished. I have Uncharted Lost Legacy that I haven't played. And I have Days Gone. I have at least those 4. Because I've done Ghost of Tsushima, both God of War games, Spider-Man Remastered, Spider-Man Miles Morales. I feel like there's something else. I mean, Horizon Zero Dawn, technically, I've done. Because I finished that one on PS4. So I haven't actually beaten it again on PC, but I probably won't. At least not until at least after I finish going through Forbidden West, and even then I probably won't go back to it. But it's like, if I just look at those alone, I already have more than enough PlayStation first party titles that I could play if I wanted to. And I don't see anything in the pipeline for PlayStation currently that moves the needle enough to where I'd be like, oh, I need to play this day one. Yes, Death Stranding 2 is coming soon, which of course I'm excited about. But for one, it's not a PlayStation first party title. 2, it is coming to PC. In fact, what excites me about it is not the fact that it was a PlayStation exclusive. It's the fact that it's a Kojima game, and because of the fact that I enjoyed the first Death Stranding so much. So there's that aspect. But once again, I'm going to treat this as true until I hear one way or the other. I'm skeptical whether or not it's actually true, but it ultimately doesn't really matter that much to me. So if I really want to play any of these games, especially the PS4 titles that I actually would like to have native versions on PC, I can just emulate them and it'll be fine. And the ones that aren't emulatable properly yet will be down the line. Because that's just how it works. It's like, early on, there's not a whole lot. I mean, Bloodborne was obviously high priority to where people focused on that one first, and they got it running, and now it runs beautifully on PC through emulation. And there will be others in the future as well. So we'll just kind of play it by ear from that standpoint. But yeah, I'll be just curious to see what actually happens. Honestly, the biggest thing for me is going to be seeing if we get announcements for either Ghosts of Yotei or Saros, because if either of those get ports announced, which I don't know that I'll ever buy Ghost of Yotei, most likely, even though if between that and like something like Spider-Man 2, I'd be more willing to buy something like that, just because of the fact that one, while the story, I don't like what they did with it, that one I feel like it would be a lot easier to just completely skip over the story, just skip every cutscene and just play the game. But even that, I'm just kind of like, I have a problem enough with the story to where I probably wouldn't buy it. And Saros is something that I might buy down the line if it ever came to PC, but I'm not in any hurry because I still would like to play Returnal all the way through. Since I did enjoy what I played of it, I just haven't played a lot of it. Yeah. I don't really have anything else to say on that matter that isn't just repeating myself.
Last week, obviously, we definitely talked about this in depth, and I did ask you about whether the next Xbox console being a PC hybrid played a factor in whether or not Sony was halting their games on PC just so it wouldn't go to Xbox. Something I forgot to also ask you is, do you think there is, at some point in the future, do you think Sony might consider having their own sort of store, even though to a degree it would still possibly be playable on Xbox because of Windows. Do you think that's something they could consider in the future, or do you think they just won't at this point?
I would say it just depends on whether or not these rumors are true. Because if these rumors are true, then I would say no, they're not going to do a store. If the rumors are false, then yeah, they probably would do a store. And I mean, if nothing else, it would just make it so that they could get 100% of the profit, because they wouldn't have to, give up that 30% to Steam or Epic or whatever. They just take 100%. And personally, like, I wouldn't be opposed to them doing that. Yes, I would prefer they'd be on Steam. And even then, it would have to be like, there has to be certain... Basically, there are only a handful of games I'd be willing to go to a PlayStation store on PC to buy my games. It would just have to be very specific games, like very specific games that I really, truly want. Because right now, I don't see anything in the pipeline, either stuff that's announced or stuff that was leaked through the Insomniac leak, that are so compelling to where I would necessarily want to do that. Especially in light of how many other games I have available to play that I want to play. And not even games that I'm like, oh, I'll just play this because this is all I have available. It's like, no, there are games that I actively want to play in my library, and I haven't played them because I just don't have the time to play everything. But, yeah.
Okay. Well, I have no further thoughts on the matter.
All right. Well, speaking of PC ports, you want to cover this story about the supposed the reasons why PC ports sales have failed so miserably.
Certainly. So, there has been a report, and this is coming from... Whoops, what's the name of the kind? It's analysis by Newzoo for GamesIndustry.biz, and they've been looking at PC sales or PC ports of PS5 games, the sales on PC, and they've been following the data, just trying to see what's happening. And according to their reports, here's the quote here: Newzoo's data shows that PlayStation titles port to PC after their console launch typically see PC account for around 30% of total players in the first 3 months across both releases. Says Manu Rosier, director of market intelligence at Newzoo. By comparison, when comparable AAA titles launch simultaneously on PC and console, PC contributes closer to 44% of players in the same period, so that's like a difference of 31% between other AAAs and Sony. And then what's notable is that this pattern is not specific to Sony's first-party portfolio. We see almost no difference between first-party PlayStation titles, 12% PC share, and third-party PlayStation exclusives, 13% share, suggesting the outcome is primarily driven by the staggered release strategy rather than franchise demand on PC. And the data indicated a declining audience share on PC for Sony's first-party titles, with more recent releases seeing declines across prior franchise updates. And then additionally, there's another, as far as other games go, at least as far as the PC share, Horizon Zero Dawn had 22% PC share over 4 million lifetime players. God of War 2018 had 14% players on PC in 3.5 million, and Marvel Spider-Man Remastered, I assume, and not just both versions, had 14% share with 3.8 million. And then 8% of PC players were accounted for Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, 7% for Horizon Forbidden West, God of War Ragnarok had 6%, and Spider-Man 2 was 5%. Ghost of Tsushima had 11% of PC share, and is also noted as being supported. It's noted by being the franchise's first PC release in that aspect. So yeah, so the report essentially says that the notable cause is most likely the fact that there have been staggered releases across PC and not really much demand. Some stuff has been varied, of course, since Horizon Zero Dawn at 22%, but other games have had lowers like 5% for Spider-Man 2 as well. One thing that was weird though, which I am very skeptical about. I thought Horizon Zero Dawn was the first PC release, because it says Ghost of Tsushima was the franchise. Oh, it's the franchise, not the. Never mind. I mistook what they were saying there. But yeah. So that's generally the gist of things there. I have thoughts on this, obviously, but before I get into that, what are your thoughts on this report?
Well, in other news, water is wet, Harmon Smith is delusional, and Chick-fil-A is delicious. So obvious news is obvious. It's stuff we've been saying for years. It's like, imagine that, you release the game years after the fact, years after it already came to PlayStation. In some cases, for one, the story is, spoiled. While it's technically possible to avoid story spoilers, the reality is that the story is already out there. So any interest people might have had from that standpoint could very well be dried up. Second of all, people on PC have built up backlogs of other games to where the launch hype, the wanting to be part of the thing, is just basically not there anymore. The demand is much lower because it's so much longer after the game's released. You get something like Spider-Man 2, which actually had a pretty short gap from the time it was released on from PlayStation to PC. It was only I think 13 months or something like that. It was maybe it wasn't quite that short. It was, that was early 2025, and I think it released late 23 on PC, on PlayStation, if I remember correctly. So you have these smaller, even with the smaller gaps, the problem in the case of Spider-Man 2 is people heard about the story and they were just like, no, I'm not interested. And then on top of that, it was a bad port. So you just have all these various issues that cause problems, but obviously the fact that they're not releasing day and date or even close is a big part of the reason why these games are selling so poorly on PC and why the market share is so much lower. And people are just not as interested in these things. Ghost of Tsushima was obviously a big exception to that, and that's because of the fact that we have weebs galore on PC, as I've said before, and Ghost of Tsushima is a great game. It's a great game. It's critically acclaimed across the board. Now, some people consider it to be mid. That's fine. That's their opinion. Personally, I thought it was an amazing game. I absolutely loved it. I was happy to buy it day one on PC, and I know that there were lots of other people, whether they played it on PlayStation before or not, that also wanted to get it day one on PC. But there's so many other things that it's just for one, they're releasing a lot later. Two, there's not necessarily as high of a demand for one reason or another. There could be all sorts of different reasons, whether it's a story reason or it's because people just have too much backlog on top of that, or if it's because it's a bad port in some cases, or it could very well just be that people didn't like the first game. Like with Forbidden West and God of War Ragnarok, I know that some people just didn't like those games very much, didn't like the first games, and so they were less interested in the second games, even though those were actually both good ports. Though I think Ragnarok at least had some issues initially when it first launched, like in the second act or something, and then they fixed it. But you have a lower demand. And then on top of that, there's also the reality that some games were just not advertised very well, and so people didn't even know that they were out. Or the fact that they were releasing games that were later in the series, in the case of Ratchet & Clank, Rift Apart was the most recent game. But there's a whole bunch of games that came before that didn't release. And, they don't even list Uncharted here. And yes, the Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection comes with Uncharted 4 and Lost Legacy. But that's the fourth Uncharted game and its spin-off. You're leaving out, well, technically it's the fifth Uncharted game because you also had the prequel that came out on Vita. So it's you have all these previous games and you didn't release I think you only released the most recent one. PlayStation's release strategy across the board has just been so inconsistent that it's like not really any wonder that, with the exception of Helldivers 2, obviously, which was day and date and, you know, was also live service and just happened to scratch the itch that people were looking for, so many of these games just didn't do it for people. And I think the one of the things that Sony really seems to fail to understand because of what they get on console is that PC players have higher standards in general. And that's not to say that no PC players are interested in these PlayStation first-party games, because there definitely are some people, especially people who still very much have the console mentality. But for people who've been playing on PC for any decent length of time, we're used to the freedom. We have so many different options already that it's like, okay, yes, this game might be critically acclaimed, but I have, you know, 50 to 100 plus other games in my library that I would like to play that interest me more, rather than spending $70 on this game that I only have a passing interest in. I'd rather just wait for a sale. So yeah, obvious news is obvious, and, you know, amazing. You know, what difference it would make if you just listened to your customers instead of just thinking that you know better, because clearly PlayStation did not know better. That's all I got.
Yes, definitely. I wholeheartedly agree with you that this is all pretty much predictable for anyone who has, you know, at least 3 brain cells. Now, there are several things here that I think I think might be a combination of two, but I think especially with one of these factors here, and one of them is probably a matter of pricing. I mean, sure, like, not staggering the release date might have done a lot of damage, but I think to top it off, having to spend full price on a game a whole year later is definitely a huge thing. You know, why? And actually, I think I would say it's a big thing, because why would I spend $60, $70 on a game when, you know, meanwhile on PlayStation, because it's been out for a year, it's already at least half off. And normally on PC, you know, wait a while and you'll get that same type of discount, whether it's right there on Steam or Epic Games, or if you want to go to like Green Man Gaming, Fanatical, or something like that, you can get, you know, an equal or possibly even better discounts on the same games, especially if you go to like Instant Gaming. But so, like, in that sense, yeah, I wouldn't buy it day one either if I could wait and spend and save money on that. But additionally, I think the big thing, which probably trumps the price, is the fact that we're not getting the games that we want.
Yeah.
I mean, look at it like this. Final Fantasy VII, that came to the Epic Games Store, and people did not buy it there. Or a lot of people, most PC gamers did not buy it on there because they went to get it on Steam. And then when it came to Steam, even though, and I know it was the integrated edition, it had, you know, the DLC and stuff. Even though it was $70, people still
70.
bought. It wasn't 70.
It was 60.
It was okay. Never mind. It was 60. So day one, people bought that. People pre-ordered that game because of the fact they wanted that. They wanted Final Fantasy Remake. Like, they wanted that. And actually, I think Square even had a special limited edition sale too, where it was like half off as well. So it was like, I think $30 too. So if you pre-ordered, if you were bought day one, you have got a discount on it too. So it's like, hey, that's a win-win. I waited a long time for this game, and I get a discount.
I think that was just with Kingdom Hearts, because 7 Remake was definitely didn't have that kind of discount when it launched on Steam.
Okay.
Because I got it day one, because like I was at the point where I was very nearly going to get it on Epic Games, and then it was announced for Steam, and I was like, okay, I guess I'm just getting it on Steam, and then I played it on Steam Deck immediately.
But yeah, and also I was going to mention that too. Kingdom Hearts, that's a game PC gamers have wanted. And sure, we've been able to emulate the games for years, but having that native version was phenomenal. And so people bought that. It doesn't matter if the collection was $70. The fact that you could get the games on PC, people bought that. And it doesn't matter the fact that these are like, I mean, granted, the collection still is like, was on the PS3. It doesn't matter if these were like 10-year-old plus games.
Mhm.
People still bought that because these were games that people wanted.
Mhm.
Sony is not giving us their best. They are giving us Spider-Man 2. They are giving us Until Dawn, which I'm not saying it's a bad game, but people aren't clamoring, to get Until Dawn.
Right.
People aren't necessarily clamoring to get Days Gone either. And I'm pretty certain that no one really was too thrilled about getting Last of Us Part 2. So Sony's giving us those games, but we're not getting Demon's Souls. We're not getting Bloodborne. I mean, PlayStation gamers aren't getting that either, but we're not getting the ones we really want. We're not getting the God of War trilogy collection.
Mhm.
Like, those are things that people would really want to get. We're not getting Infamous. Like, these are the things that if they put those games on PC, those would sell well, but we're not getting those games. And so I think that's definitely a big reason as to why. I mean, sure, there are people who want these games or be interested in getting these games. I'm not denying that, but at the same time, people just don't necessarily want it. I mean, other people possibly even just want the older God of War games and not just like the Norse saga, because of like the gameplay aspects. I mean, sure, they might not want for the story, but the gameplay aspects of, because if they grew up playing, like the original ones, they're like, yeah, I want that hack and slash feel, and it's more like, well, that's not what I want. I don't want this new version. I want the old version that I originally played. That's definitely a key thing there. So, sure, staggered release, I think, is definitely one thing. Pricing in tandem with that, I think, is another thing. But I think the bigger thing is just that these are games people don't really want. I didn't buy Spider-Man 2. I didn't buy Miles Morales. Probably says a lot about me. I didn't buy Until Dawn. I didn't buy Last of Us Part 1 or 2. I didn't buy Ragnarok. I do have God of War, though. I do have God of War. But the reason why I'm not buying all of the PlayStation games is just because not all of them interest me. And I mean, that's fine. I mean, not every game is going to appeal to everyone, but at the same time, you do have to know what the audience wants. If the audience wants X, then give them X. If they want Y, give them Y. Instead, you're giving us L. And so that's why the sales I definitely believe aren't doing that well. If Sony were to go ahead and just say, hey, we're going to go ahead, give you Demon's Souls Remake, I'm willing to bet you that will be one of the better selling games. It doesn't matter if it has been 3+ years since it released. It will definitely
5 years,
sell
actually.
well.
Or
5 years.
Over 5 years. Because it was 2020 that it released.
Well then, it doesn't matter if it's a 5+ year old game. The fact that people actually want this will do well. I mean, look at Elden Ring. I mean, sure, that didn't release. That was a day and date game, but that was one of the best selling games that From Software had, especially on PC, and they could have that same success if they went. Sony could have that same success if they went ahead and released Demon's Souls, just because that's a game people want. But they refuse to be. They continue to be stubborn. So it's just gonna be a lesson that they have to keep learning. How many times do I have to teach you this, old man?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all that I have to say on the matter.
Yep. But if it's true that Sony's not releasing any more first-party games on PC, well, Sony, we've given you the keys to making money on PC, and if you're just too stubborn or stupid to make the decisions that will actually make you more money on PC, you got nobody to blame but yourself. But that does bring up our next topic, and that is that, as we had mentioned last week, with them not selling games anymore on PC, apparently, they're going to start milking their users more, and they've already started doing it with dynamic pricing. So let me bring up the story here and read some more specifics so that I'm not just making this up, I guess you could say, out of my butt. So this is according to Polygon, and I looked at the PlayStation Store myself a little bit to kind of verify some of this, but let's just find the specific thing. So basically, the gist of what it is that Sony is doing is they are giving different prices to different customers depending on their purchase history, depending on whether they buy games regularly, how much demand there is, where they're located, things like that. But according to Polygon, in the case of the PlayStation Store, a website called PS Prices has been tracking the numbers across Sony's digital platform. In an update on its research, the website said that it had detected unusual offer structures containing experiment identifiers while monitoring the PlayStation Store's API responses. By keeping track of the testing identifiers, the proprietors found that Sony has been A/B testing prices for a number of games, including first-party titles like God of War Ragnarok and The Last of Us Part 2. The program allegedly includes 139 different games and has been running across 68 regions. According to the price tracking website, price differences can fall anywhere between 5.3% to 17.9%. Notably, the test only included price decreases, not price hikes. The experiment has also not occurred within the United States. Whether or not that's actually true, I'm not sure. But the other thing is that it says that in addition to dynamic pricing, the PlayStation Store has also been found to display personalized discounts for users. One example cited by PS Prices is Helldivers 2, where the extraction shooter appeared with two different sale prices. Some users apparently saw the normal 25% discount, while others were treated to a 56% discount. And PS Prices notes that the experiment has been running for at least 3 months. And so that's essentially the gist of it. I will say I did a little bit of just looking to see like what kind of prices showed for me on the PlayStation Store as someone who hasn't bought anything from PlayStation in years now. And I definitely saw some discounts that I'm not sure how much of those would apply. I mean, I forgot to check the store while not signed in, so I might actually do that while you're giving your comments just to see what the difference is in prices. But what are your thoughts?
So this is definitely I think it's definitely quite shady. I mean, sure, you might say, oh, cool, if this is a game I want, I'm glad I got the extra discount. But here's the thing, though. That just means there are other discounts you could be getting that you aren't getting, just because you're not the target, you're not the market demographic for the discount, which I think is definitely really shady. I think that you're probably more likely to get people to buy a game if it's discounted. I mean, if I see a game that's on sale, and mainly this might be if I'm getting a bundle or something like that on, say, Fanatical, I'll be like, yeah, I probably ordinarily wouldn't get this game, but because it's on sale, I'll go ahead and get it. That's something that I think would entice more people to buy the games. But if you're just going to give random, or I guess not random, but specific discounts to specific people, I don't like that at all. And I mean, I've seen a couple people defend this and say that's what happens on Steam, and it's like, no, the bundles on Steam are if you already own the game, because the bundle applies to the discount applies to the whole bundle. So if you didn't own the game and you bought the whole bundle, you'd get that same discount because it's part of the bundle. So that's completely different from what Sony's doing here, where, okay, we're going to give you this discount because you play a game within this franchise or because it's a game similar to the one that you own. And I don't think that's right. And another thing is, that means you're possibly paying more than other people are, and there's no way for you to get that discount at all. It's not like going to a certain place like to get a discount, like, you know, Green Man Gaming, Fanatical, something like that, where if you go to this store, you can get these discounts and you know where to get the discounts, which is definitely, I would say, a huge problem with the PlayStation Store, is the fact that that's the only place you can actually go and get your games digitally. Because unlike, say, with Xbox, with Steam, Epic Games, GOG, that's the only place you can buy your games digitally. People have wanted to have that option, I believe, and I think Sony was even sued a few years back by, I can't remember which country it was. I know it was
something in Europe.
Yeah, like they were sued because they essentially had a monopoly for selling their games only on their store, and or at least not allowing people to buy the games off the store or from another store, from something like that. And yeah, that makes sense, because if you have to buy your games if you can only buy your games on the Sony PlayStation Store, I mean digitally of course, then you have to pay the price they are charging. You can't get any discounts unless they give you any. You know, people can talk about all this other stuff with other stores. I definitely understand that there are problems with other, that there are other problems, but at least with the Nintendo eShop, you can buy your games from other places. Like, you can buy them on Humble Bundle. I think you can buy some on Instant Gaming too. You can definitely buy Xbox games pretty much for the most part in many other stores too. PC, name a store, you know. So you have options. On the PlayStation Store, you have no options. It is Sony will give you what you will take what Sony gives and hope it's not full price. That's all you can do. That's all you can do with it. So I think having this variable pricing is an insult, just because you are not getting the most that you could get. And like I said, people probably could buy other games if there was a discount on them. Someone might see a game and say, I don't know, it's you know, $30. I don't think I'll get that. But if the game was on discount for, say, $15, maybe $10, they might say, I'll get that. But because you only gave that discount to a select few people, that means that other people won't buy that game, most likely, just because they didn't get that discount. So I do not like this idea. I think it's the worst thing that Sony could be doing right now, and that's just another reason why I guess you could say I will not be buying a PlayStation, because I do not want to be locked in that type of ecosystem where I have to buy, or I can only get discounts if Sony gives them to me, and not if I feel like going to see where I can get the best bang for my buck. So yeah, that's what I have to say on the topic.
Yeah, so I did just do a quick search, and I did notice, at least with a couple of games, the pricing is exactly the same for both. The only real difference is, like, in the case of, for example, like God of War Ragnarok, which I have on PS4, when signed in on the app, it does just give me the option of just doing an upgrade fee to the PS5 version, which, you know, makes sense, because that's a normal thing they have, is an upgrade thing for that. But yeah, so it looks like the thing about it not being in the US yet is accurate. But the thing is still a question of how long will it be before they start doing that in the US as well. Of course, at the same time, PlayStation also has a tendency to basically screw over their customers in other countries before they do the US, because the US is their biggest market, and like it's like basically US and UK and Europe are like their three biggest markets. I don't even think Japan's very big for them. They've lost a lot of ground in Japan since they stopped making actual Japanese games. But yeah, I think this whole thing is kind of scummy, and I mean, I just don't think any company should do that. And like you said, they don't allow their games to be purchased digitally anywhere but their store. They used to allow you to buy them other places. You could buy keys elsewhere. But they stopped doing that some years ago. I don't know when they stopped doing that, but it was a number of years ago that they stopped doing that. And I remember I had talked about that on my Why I Love PC Gaming video. And I just double checked after I recorded that to see whether or not that had changed, whether they started selling their games elsewhere, but they still haven't. They still only sell it on their store. So it's entirely a monopoly from that standpoint, at least apart from, on PC where you can buy it either on Steam, Epic Games, or in a few cases, GOG. And I guess in general, you could probably buy the keys elsewhere as well for PC. But for the PlayStation versions, you really can only buy them on PlayStation. I guess it's possible, like Instant Gaming, I think might have keys for some PlayStation games, but I'm not positive on that. It's possible that's not for any of the first-party stuff, and it's only for the third-party stuff. But I remember that I've seen, like, they've had keys for at least Xbox, if not also some PlayStation games. I know Nintendo does. Their keys for their games can be sold by other retailers as well for digital games. So I don't know. But this is, I'm not going to be like, oh, let's just crap all over Sony because they're doing this. It's like, I'm sure that others will follow suit as well. And I mean, to some degree, this sort of already exists in some ways, but more so in that certain countries have higher prices than others because of the value of their currencies. And that's really what it comes down to. But the actual dynamic pricing on a per user basis is definitely something new and not good. But, like we said last week, if Sony's not going to get additional money from PC users, they're going to find ways to milk their existing users. And I would imagine probably the people who are going to get milked the hardest are the people who typically will buy games day one. Pay the full $70, they're going to get charged more because PlayStation knows that they're more likely to spend that extra money rather than taking those discounts. So, just watch. That's what's going to happen. Like it or not, this is not something that's going to be only in other countries. It's going to make its way over to even the bigger markets, in my opinion, at least. That's all I got for that.
Yeah, a couple of things I just want to add. I'm glad you mentioned that because I forgot to bring this up. I do think that about regional pricing, I think that's probably one of the better, more positive, variants of this would be, incorporating that just because, like you said, other countries' currencies might be better or worse than others, might be stronger or weaker. So having that regional pricing definitely helps the consumers on that end. So I have no issue with regional pricing. I think that's definitely a good thing from a consumer standpoint. And when games do have that, I think that's great. And I mean, I know Valve has some regional pricing. I don't know if it's with all games, but with some games, since they definitely have that. It might be based on publisher, I think, because I know some, like I said, some games, I know people have in other countries have said, hey, could you introduce regional pricing here for this game because, it's way expensive over here because we're essentially paying the exact same price that you're paying and it's like worth a whole lot more over here. So I don't know if it's a matter of like publishers have to do that or if it's just what it is. But yeah, regional pricing is definitely good. I don't know what country this took place in, but it's something that I saw that I want to bring up as well, where there was a husband and wife, and he bought a game and he got it on sale on the PlayStation Store, and he sent a screenshot of the price it was for him. But when he went to buy the game for his wife, so she could play it with him, she didn't get that discount. So she had to pay full price for it while he got a discount, which is just like, yeah, that's messed up. Where it's like, even if you're in the same household, you know, someone else has to pay a different price because they're not the targeted demographic for a particular game, which is just like, why Sony? Why? But yeah, that's just, those were just a few additions that I wanted to add there.
All right. Well, you want to talk about Xbox's update with the console name and everything else?
All right. So recently the official code name for the next Xbox was revealed, and it's called Project Helix. And it's coming. We don't know too much about it. Just that it's been announced and that Microsoft has said that it will run both Xbox and PC games, which is something that has been talked about for some time now. Definitely with rumors and stuff and leaks allegedly and stuff like that. But according to Moore's Law is Dead, we have some more specifics with it. One thing about it is that Microsoft is going to be using something equivalent to an AMD RX 9070 XT graphics card. And he says that, let me get his specifics that he said here. He said, maybe they're wrong, but I don't think they are. He said, I think Sony's going for a more PS4-like approach next gen, and Xbox is, well, they're building a bridge out of the console market, and so they'll probably charge $1,000 or more for this thing. And he was talking about, he said, I have a document that directly says AMD wants their successor to the 9070 XT that uses the RDNA 5 AT die. AMD has directly said in a document they're targeting 550 now. Who knows what that really means, where prices will be. Maybe they'll end up being $650 next year. But if the graphics card itself, which uses the same chiplet regarding to Helix uses, and uses the same type of RAM, let's say it's $600, well, that's what? You need to add more RAM for the Xbox. All right, well, what would that really be? Another $200 there, and then the CPU die for the Xbox Helix is more expensive than obviously the output die that would be in the graphics card. But then it's not that big of a die, even though it's 3 nanometers, another $100. So essentially what Moore's Law is saying is that he believes that because of the different components in there, based on the document, he's saying that the Helix will possibly cost between $1,000 and $1,200. And he says that if Microsoft wants to sell this thing at cost, they could probably do so at around $900 if it was mass manufactured at a large scale. So anyone who thinks it'll be $2,000, I don't think the total cost of parts suggests that. And he says that he does expect them to make a small profit off of that. And he said, and then he added saying, a lot of people will still just get the PlayStation. Most people will, I think. But for people who want to go to PC gaming and had an Xbox, I think that'll be a compelling argument at $1,000 and probably even at $1,200. Once they get to $1,500, I do think that's when people start to riot at Microsoft, and I would recommend that even if they have to profit on it for this console to make sense, they don't go completely out to lunch for what they charge. So yeah, so we don't have, a lot of details on that, and the fact that Moore's Law is even saying that it's equivalent to a 9070 XT, that's definitely hasn't been announced yet. I have several strong thoughts on this, but before I get into that, what are yours on the matter?
Well, for starters, the code name, Project Helix, I like that. I know that, being code name, it's not the official, final name of the console, kind of like how the Xbox One X was like Project Scorpio, if I remember correctly. And so, what the actual final name is going to be, I don't know. But obviously, not surprisingly, it is a melding of console and PC together so that it can play both Xbox and PC games. Hopefully that'll mean that there will be either the ability to play the Xbox games natively, or at least have some type of translation layer like what you have with Steam and Proton. I would assume it's going to be more the latter, but I know that they had, at least in the past, been talking about trying to add that additional compatibility. So as far as it getting PC games as well, it's not surprising. We basically knew this was going to happen anyway, and it makes perfect sense. It really does. Now, as far as the pricing goes, that part I'm really not sure about, because from a PC perspective, that price isn't bad necessarily. If it's actually going to be as powerful as they're saying, having a GPU equivalent to a 9070 XT, because that's a very good card. And obviously, depending on what kind of both RAM and CPU it has, will make a big difference in whether or not that ultimately comes together in such a way that it's going to be like really a good, reasonably powerful machine. But that price would be hard for console players to swallow. At least if they're viewing this as just an Xbox, if they're not looking at it as an actual PC that also is a console. I think it's going to be harder for them to swallow. And I know, obviously, I'm not going to buy one. I wouldn't buy one regardless, because there's just absolutely zero motivation when I already have multiple PCs. I mean, I have my desktop that's very powerful, my laptop that's decently powerful, the Steam Deck that's powerful enough to play most games, but not every game. And then potentially, depending on the price, may end up getting a Steam machine, which is pretty similar in power to my laptop. Plus, the kids have their living room PC that's more powerful than the laptop, but much less powerful than my desktop, my current desktop. The point I'm trying to make, though, is that obviously this is not something for me, but I do think that this could be, once again, something that could help with people on the Xbox side who are Xbox loyal and that sort of thing, or just are interested in getting into PC gaming, but they kind of want to ease into it. I think this could be really good, but the price is really just the issue. I think that if they actually want to sell it, they need to keep it under $1,000. Not that people won't spend more than that, but it's going to be a much harder sell. And I think as it is, even the price of $900 is going to be a hard sell. Now, I guess the one question that I really have with that is, if they do go that high, even assuming that it is more powerful than the PS6, like Moore's Law is Dead is saying that it probably will be, is the price going to be so much different from the PS6 to where it just ends up being a complete failure? And I'm not confident that the thing is going to do well regardless, even though I think it will be a much better product. I don't think it's going to do a much better product than previous Xboxes. I'm not saying anything about how it'll compare to the PS6 because I have no idea, but I think it'll be a better product in the simple fact that it's going to be a much more open platform, that people will have the option to do the open side of things, that they'll be able to do Steam or GOG or Epic if they're crazy, or Battle.net, or what have you, and they'll be able to have access to those PlayStation games that are already on PC, regardless of whether any more come in the future. One thing that will definitely be interesting about that is whether, when it comes to the point of, like we get games that at least start out as PlayStation exclusive and then come to PC later, or release day and date, that are, of course, not first-party games, assuming the rumor's true. That would mean, of course, that the Xbox would be able to play them. So would Sony just say, okay, because this game has to come to PC, we're just going to accept the fact that Xbox players are going to be able to play it? Or would they just bite the bullet and just make an Xbox version and be like, there's no point in fighting it. They're going to be able to play it anyway. We might as well just make an extra version for them. I mean, I kind of doubt that, but this whole situation, this whole generation, and what's happening with the gaming industry is so bizarre right now. It's so all over the place. And I mean, I'm still very much of the opinion that console exclusives, well, exclusives of any kind, are very anti-consumer because they require that you buy a separate piece of hardware that you might not otherwise want, just so you can play certain games instead of just being able to buy the game wherever you want to play it, and they just provide you with a better product that's actually worth it outside of the exclusives. But I digress. Either way, this is one of those where we're really just gonna have to wait and see what happens with it. I'm not really positive, or I'm not fully positive on the new Xbox, but I'm also not fully negative because I see how it could be good for the consumer in terms of its functionality, even if not necessarily on price. And of course, with the way the prices are right now and the fact that they don't seem like they're going down anytime soon, it also might end up being ultimately better for the consumer, because if they can get away with selling it for less than it would cost to actually build an equivalent PC, then there's that. But it's ultimately a question of are they determined to make a profit? Do they want to sell more units? And depending on which direction they go, or if they find some middle ground, will determine a big part of whether or not they can actually sell much of anything. And ultimately, it doesn't matter that much, because really they're going to be making the vast majority of their money regardless of console sales, just from more people using Windows. Because even people who never go into Windows on the new Xbox are still going to be in Windows. They just won't be in desktop mode. They'll still have their data collected and sold, and Microsoft will still make money. So, yeah, that's all I got.
It's definitely interesting, and I mean, it's definitely obviously great that we've gotten confirmation that it is a PC console hybrid, which I think is great because, like you said, it allows console players to have that. It allows them to dip their toe into PC gaming if they decide to say, hey, I want to get PC games and switch over to sort of like a desktop mode and tinker around with that and go to different stores. I think that's great. I am partially skeptical in some things. On one hand, while I do know that there were definitely a whole lot of things that happened last year with AI, and that has caused a lot to go out of whack, especially with planning. And I mean, I have no clue as to what AMD had planned, but Nvidia definitely originally were going to have their RTX 50 super cards plans, and that didn't happen. And the 60 series cards are more likely getting bumped up to 2027, or was 2028, something like that. They're 2027 probably, just because of the RAM shortage. But I do know at one point I was waiting for a potential 9080 XT because Moore's Law is Dead said, hey, this is something that AMD is going to be bringing out and stuff. And I said, hey, I would definitely go ahead and get one. And I'm definitely glad I didn't wait and got the 9070 XT because now it's like, well, there's no 9080 XT now, and the price for the 9070 XT has definitely gone up. So it's I'm like, so did that just get canceled, or was that just something that never happened at all, or was going to happen at all? But so I'm partially taking what he's saying with a grain of salt here. At the same time, though, like you said, if the Helix really is using a 9070 XT or the equivalent of one for $1,000, $1,200, that's what, like you said, from a PC perspective, that's a pretty good price to pay for something like that. But also, like you said, from a console perspective, though, that's pretty expensive.
Yep.
Looking at the price of the current Xbox Series X, that is $650. That would mean a $350 to $550 price increase, which is the cost essentially of practically a current console. So you're paying nearly up to 50% more for next gen console, which is definitely insane from that perspective. Now, obviously, if you're making a jump from, say, a PS5 Pro, which is currently
$750.
There, I just saw. Yeah. Oh, wait, what's that? Yeah. For that, you know, that's closer to that, but still at the same price. That's still a pretty decent jump there. So it's definitely insane to think about that a console could cost that much money. And you know, sure, some people might say, but inflation, if you account for inflation, consoles obviously should cost more like $1,500, and that's why games should cost, $120, because back in the 90s when we were using proprietary cartridges and gaming was a niche hobby, and so not too many people bought it, they had to charge that much. But no, it's just that's a huge price jump right there. And also considering the fact that, again, and we've talked about this before, the prices for consoles have gone up, not down, which is a first for any console generation. Prices have gone down, not up. So I think just in general, the next generation of consoles are in a very weird position right now with what happens, just because will RAM get better? We don't know. I mean, I think eventually the whole AI craze will burst. Now, I don't think that'll cause RAM prices to go down immediately. It might take months. It might take even, say, a year for that to happen. But eventually that will cause, there will be more availability, since people won't be like, oh, I guess we shouldn't have invested in AI, so we might as well just leave that behind.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely have to see what happens there, but until that happens, the console manufacturers will have to wonder about, what are we going to do about our next generation of consoles? How much, will we have to charge for them? How much will our consumers be willing to pay for these consoles? That's gonna be like the biggest thing. So while I do again think, and this is again, if we assume that that the Helix is using a 9070 XT equivalent, $1,200 is a good deal. At the same time, though, for a console player, that's just probably too much. Like, if I were a console player and I saw that the console was going to cost that much, I would say, yeah, no thank you.
Yeah.
Even if I mean, I would have no clue about like how much power that is. But even if I knew that, I would just say, that's insane. I bought a console for like $300, maybe $400 at most. But you're expecting me to spend like $1,000 plus? No way. So it's going to be a very tough pill for consumers to swallow. Like you said, if they keep it under $1,000, they'll do better. But still, I think it's going to be a tough. It's gonna be rough, and regardless of Microsoft or Sony, they better not be increasing the price halfway through the next generation. Even if they don't lower the price, they just cannot go ahead and raise the price, because that is just going to be, you're gonna be really bummed. You're really gonna be getting to uncharted waters at that point. As we get closer to that, especially if it's on the higher end of the estimate, we're getting closer to $1,500 for a console. That's just that's insane there. So I'm going to hold this with a grain of salt. It could be $1,000, maybe $1,200. We'll see. But on the other hand, we still know nothing official yet, so I am not going to be buying too much into what Moore's Law is Dead is saying, but I will have a partial open mind regarding this, though.
Yeah.
But regardless, like I said, it'll just be a matter of what will console players be willing to spend.
Yeah, for sure. We'll just have to wait and see what actually happens. I'm hoping Microsoft is actually like a little bit smarter on this end. It's such a weird situation though, because of course, with where we are with pricing and everything, it's hard to say exactly what's going to happen. And in addition to that, I mean, we've been through on the PC side things like this in the past, like with the crypto mining stuff, and the 1080 Ti's were just getting bought up and used constantly for crypto mining and all that stuff, and it was causing prices to go way up. I mean, this is obviously different because the AI stuff is causing prices for RAM to go up, and it's also causing prices for storage to go up, and it's just a different situation from that standpoint. But as you said, at some point the bubble will probably burst. It's just a question of when. And I mean, I would like to think if Microsoft was being smart, and same goes for PlayStation, if they were being smart, they would look at the reality that the prices will eventually level out when the bubble bursts. And they would sell the consoles at a loss initially because of the fact that they know that it's going to drop at some point. And if they start at a lower price, they're going to gain a much bigger market share, so that when the bubble bursts, they can start actually making a profit and make up for the money that they lost. But that's probably not what they're going to do. I mean, that's not realistic. That's probably not what's going to happen. Valve, I could see that being more likely to do something like that. But even then, I'm not sure if they would with the Steam machine. And obviously, we got the recent news that even though they're saying they are releasing the stuff in 2026, we don't know when in 2026. And of course, as a result, Half-Life 3 is being held hostage, regardless of whether we get the Steam controller before the machine and frame come out. But yeah. That is all I have for news. Anything else you want to discuss before we close out for the night?
No, sir.
All right, well, let's get into our recommendations and dissuasions. So why don't you start us off?
All right, so my recommendation, I have a couple here. My first one is if you are going to be washing your rice, especially, and I guess especially if you're going to be soaking in particular, make sure you monitor it while you are cooking it. This was my first time actually soaking the rice when I tried washing, and I realized that I don't need to cook the rice as long as I normally would. And so it's a good thing I checked, because otherwise, if I cooked it for the full time I normally would have, it would have been mushy. So if you are soaking your rice for a certain period of time, make sure you monitor it while it's cooking, just so it doesn't overcook and you get mushy rice, because no one wants that at all. Second recommendation I have is if you have I can't remember the full name. If you have a Digibyte Vader Pro 4 controller, while in general it is set up to be a Xbox style controller, I only realized this today when I was using it. If you switch it to the NS tab, it actually has the layout for Nintendo Switch controller. So it automatically has that layout, and you'll have to do any sort of configuration. It's just like that out of the box. So if you plug it into your PC, it'll recognize it as a Switch Pro controller.
Okay.
So that's just a little thing there. If you like that layout instead, you can do that.
All right. Good to know. Well, I have a couple of recommendations. First of all, thank goodness you're here. As far as I know, it's everywhere. I actually don't know if it's on Switch. I would think it would be, but I haven't looked, so I'm not sure if it's there, but there's zero reason why it wouldn't be able to run on Switch, so it probably is there. So that's my first recommendation. Get that. Short and sweet, very funny. And my second recommendation is in Death Stranding, as soon as you have the ability to make them, make use of zip lines, and probably even when you're in between like actual deliveries that you have to do, like that you're timed on, just take some time to walk along a route that you'll need to get to a place that's further away and just set up a bunch of zip lines, because if you can set up enough of them, you can make it so that you don't have to walk a single step and you can just zip line all the way there, you know, with multiple zip lines one to another, and that'll save you a ton of time for those time restricted ones, especially when you're doing the premium deliveries. So that is what I have for recommendations. Dissuasions.
Sweet. Yeah, my dissuasion is going to be for Hades 2. During your final encounter with Kronos, do not use any modifiers at all, unless you feel very confident in yourself. Just because the final phase can take you by surprise, and I didn't know that you had the extra Death Defiance, but in case you can run out of Death Defiances after that, then I would definitely say don't take that risk and just go into it with a normal run, and you can always go back through a run later and add modifiers, but just don't use one during the last encounter.
All right. Well, my dissuasion is going to be don't overstuff a burrito. It can be very easy to overstuff. This evening we had Mexican for dinner. I made up some carnitas over the weekend and then crisped it up today, and got some big, huge Chipotle / Qdoba style, giant tortillas to try to make myself a burrito like that, but I put way too much in it, so I'm just having to eat it with a fork instead. But yeah, don't overstuff your burritos. Sometimes that's easier said than done. All right, where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel. I am Xeracon. That's IAMXERACON. So youtube.com/@IamXeracon. No new content this past week, but I am going to start working soon on my next video, which I'll just say is regarding the number 580. And it might be regarding that several different times. But that will be the next video that I get out there. Might actually also have one other video in the pipeline that I've sort of started to get, but that's gonna be something where I have to get a couple other things together, and then that'll be another project that I work on. But then I also have my other channel, Justin's Bible Blog. That's @Justin'sBibleBlog. No new content there yet. I still have to work out something there, just because I really want to get this get this next video out to the best that I can. So I'm trying to really work on my script on that and fix the touches up on there. But that video will be coming out hopefully within the next week, Lord willing. But we'll see what happens there. But yeah, that is everything that I have in the pipeline.
All right, good stuff. Well, you can find me on my YouTube gaming channel @FrozenGamer87. I haven't put out anything new in a while, but I do hope to start working on those videos soon. God willing, this weekend, I'm hoping to at least get one or two of them put together, or at least, start recording stuff for them so that I can start working on getting stuff put together. But It's a little bit up in the air since my in-laws will be here, so I'm not entirely sure how all of that's going to work just yet. Either way, I'm hoping to get some stuff put together pretty soon, because my goal is to hopefully have at least one of the major videos up before I do my Extra Life stream mid-April. So we'll see how that goes, but that's at least what I'm aiming for. Then there is the YouTube and Rumble channels for the podcast. On YouTube, that's at the Orange Box Podcast. On Rumble, it's not a custom URL, but you could still find us there. The video version of the podcast goes live every Friday, 7 a.m. Central Time, barring any technical issues. The audio-only version normally goes live on all major audio podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Spotify, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and others at 12 a.m. Central Time every Friday, barring technical issues. This past week, even though I uploaded it on Wednesday, I forgot to actually schedule it, so I didn't find out until Saturday that it hadn't actually gotten published. My nephew told me that it wasn't up, and then I looked and saw, oh yeah, I didn't actually publish it. I didn't schedule it, so it didn't get published. But anyway, so normally 12 a.m. Central Time every Friday for the audio-only version. And if you'd like to contact us, you can send an email to the orangeboxpodcast@gmail.com, or you can also comment on the video version of the podcast on YouTube or Rumble, and we'll be sure to read your comment on the show and respond to you, or a comment or question or whatever, and all that good stuff. But that is everything, I believe. All right, last chance. Any final thoughts?
No, sir.
All right, well, I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is I'm Zerocon. We are the Orange Box Podcast, and until next time, sign into PSN to get a dynamic discount on the podcast wherever you may listen to it. Orange Box Podcast, out.